14 pounds. Your trees have survived, so what are we doing today? Fruit. These are the main topics we're going to cover: watering, fertilizer, pruning, do's and don'ts. If you need further information, and how permaculture, or as even in the shirt that I'm wearing, says clever laziness. In general, all plants, including fruit trees, need about 1 inch of water per week. Clay is dense, which is our typical soil, and a slow soak is better than a sudden drench. Always try to water early in the morning or very late at night. Try not to water from above. I know this when it rains, there's nothing you can do about that. But that's the exception. When you do water the leaves, it's an invitation for fungal diseases. And as we're going to talk about peaches later on, that's one of the main maladies of peaches is a fungal disease called brown rot. So, water near the ground at the drip line. Trees. Most people like to water near the trunk, which is not where the tree needs it. They needs it out at the drip line and further out where the root tips are. The other interesting thing is that tap water contains chlorine and fluoride. If you can't avoid tap water, you can use open container for a while, and the chemicals will evaporate. Or collect water in rain barrels. Watering bags, which they sell, I don't like these because they're just too close to the trunk. Wood chips, which we use a lot of mulch at all our fruit trees because it helps retain moisture at the root tips. So that's what we like to do. Do not group the chips next to the trunk. That's hurts the tree and invites insects into the tree. Possible mulch materials, you probably all know this. Grass clippings are very good, hardwood bark, hardwood chips, shredded leaves, peat moss, all good materials. Fertilizing. You don't need to use harsh chemicals in order to fertilize. In fact, I hardly fertilize now because of the mulch we use, and also we depend on what's available through nature for us. The reason I have this picture Saturday Night Fever is Walter Reeves, who teaches one of the teachers at Master Gardener program, uses this as a reminder of the 3 ingredients that are found in most fertilizer bags. He calls the nitrogen, which is John Travolta's hand up in the air, is for growth and energy storage. Phosphorus, which is where his feet are for the roots, flowers, and fruit. And the third chemical in the bags, potassium, is for overall. Yeah, it's unmuted. I know. Fruit trees also need some of these other micronutrients and minerals, which you can get, by the way, with mulch. They're all available because they came from the trees. There's also compost, which you can get if you live in DeKalb, you can get it free from DeKalb at 2 different sites. I think actually maybe 3 different sites. Kelp meal is a very, very good fertilizer choice. Falling leaves. I actually have used rabbit waste as a fertilizer, and that's been very, very good. Different types of fertilizer materials here. I'm not going to read all these. You recognize them. They all have different chemical designations. And then the only exception to this are blueberries, which require more acidic soil. Blueberries will not do well in a neutral soil, which is the soil that most other fruits prefer. This is a very, very good fertilizer for blueberries, which you can find at any big box store or on Amazon. Avoid manure unless you know its source. The same with straw. Sometimes it's sprayed with pesticides and herbicides, and which will result in damage to your fruit trees. Best time to fertilize, not in the fall or even late in the summer. You don't want to stimulate new growth at that time. late February, early March, which actually can start a little bit earlier because of climate change, I think, and then after and July 1st, first week of July. If you're not sure of your soil, you can get a UGA extension soil test, which is available on Memorial Drive, or you can just mail it to UGA. This is what the bags look like on the left, and it'll explain where to take your soil samples from. Also, if you're concerned that there might be more other problems with your soil, there are other tests available for harmful metals, pesticides, organic solvents, petroleum compounds. The one on the right is pretty expensive at $150. Pruning do's and don'ts. I find pruning very therapeutic, but a lot of people are afraid of it because they're afraid they're going to damage the tree. But it's necessary, especially for peach trees, because you want to open the tree up for greater air circulation and also for greater sunlight. These are two of our interns that we had, the Tucker Orchard Guild. They were with us for 2 years. The gentleman on the left is now at UGA, doing a lot of great things there with horticulture. And the young lady on the right is at, reversed. The gentleman on the left is at Georgia Tech, doing some great things there. And the woman on the right is at UGA. There we go with the air circulation. It also, pruning stimulates growth on the tree because there's over 200 chemical processes that go into, that the tree has available to it for growth, stimulation, protection. So unpruned trees also take longer to prune. There are two main types of pruners that are available. These are called bypass pruners, where the blades pass each other. And then there's also anvil, where the top blade sort of strikes the lower one. The most common kind is the bypass pruner. And the heavier blade or the bigger blade should be on top. But don't feel terrible if you have to twist it around in order to have access. We also now have 5 interns from Tucker High School.
Mike, really fast.
And here are a couple of them just last week at the Peach Pit.
Can you hear me, Mike?
I'm sorry?
There's like a little bit of feedback because I think your speakers on your computer are on. Is that possible?
Okay, hold on 1 second. Hold on.
Thanks, guys, for bearing with us. I don't know if y'all could hear Mike twice, but I could hear Mike twice. Anybody have thoughts, questions while we wait? I'm not as knowledgeable as Mike, but I can try.
We're good. Could you try talking, make sure that everything sounds good?
I had a question about applying compost when for these fruit trees. I've actually never applied compost to a tree. What's kind of the way what's kind of the method of doing that? Is it literally just kind of applying it to like the drip line area?
You're asking how the best way to apply compost?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Mike,
hold
on, Mike, pause. Were you able to turn off your computer speakers? So you don't want any sound coming out of your computer.
Line 4. No. 542. Line 2, yeah. Yeah. Just any better, Catherine? No.
Keep talking.
Yes, I have Sue working on it with me, so.
I think that sounds better. We got a thumbs up if that's better.
Does this
Okay.
sound better?
Yeah.
No, it's still echoing.
It sounds
I think it
clearer
sounds
on
good.
our side. Yeah.
Okay, is this
So
better, Catherine?
don't connect to audio on your computer. I see it saying connecting to audio.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Where to come from?
Alrighty, Mike, do you want to try? So I was like, let's just ask questions while we're waiting. So you can address the compost question now, or you can keep going and address it
You
at
can
the
wait till
end.
the end. I was just trying to fill time, so that
Yeah.
works.
Mike? My 2 cents about the compost thing is that you definitely don't do it the first year you plant your trees. And it's just top dressing kind of around. And, I wouldn't say put it more than like an inch thick around the tree. And yeah, I mean, you can spread it, like he was saying, it drinks at the roots. So you could spread it kind of, leave a,
Would you maybe water it as well at the time, or just kind of just lay it on top?
either way is fine. I don't think it matters if you water it, but I mean, it'll obviously soak into the soil faster if you water it, but it's not critical.
I know. I'm like, no video.
I've heard you should pull the mulch back first and then put it under the mulch and put the mulch back on top. I don't know if that matters.
Oh yeah, if you have mulch, you should definitely put it under the mulch.
Under the mulch.
Question is, why not compost the first year? So the first year you plant a tree, there's like a lot of adjusting to its new environment. So you want the tree to just have time to like get used to the soil that it's been planted into. And so it's better to just give it that first year to like get used to what's going on. Also, you run the risk of just giving it way too much nitrogen, which can also shock the tree. So it's better to just give it a year, let it get adjusted, situated in its new environment, and then start to compost. Mike, how are you doing?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
So we talked about compost a little bit, so we'll wait and we can talk about that more at the end. But can you go back one slide and then start from there?
Okay. Go back one slide.
Yeah.
Okay. Previous slide. Whoops. Is that the slide you wanted?
Yes. And let's start from
Okay.
there.
Catherine, can you still hear me?
Yep, we're good.
Great. Okay. Is this the slide you wanted?
I think so. So let's start from pruning. Yeah.
Going back to mulch, did you answer his question, Catherine?
Yeah, I did for now, but we can talk about it more at the end if you'd like.
Okay. Yeah, the biggest thing is don't do the have the mulch go right up to the tree trunk. Back it off 4 or 5 inches and do it at least out to the drip line. Okay. There's an old proverb, the best time to prune is when the knife is sharp. It's not really true. Technically, you can prune anytime. Peach trees, I actually do sometimes during the summer with neem oil in hand to prevent insects from damaging the tree. The other thing, 2 things that's very, very important is to keep your pruners very, very clean using alcohol, or I use a hydrogen peroxide. Try to avoid anything stronger than that, and keep your pruners sharp. Very important. Technically, late fall, winter, early spring are the ideal times. Cutting the tree back stimulates stronger, more vigorous growth from the remaining buds. As I said earlier, you should be able to remove up to a third of the tree without damaging the tree. Most people that start pruning get real nervous about damaging the tree. They do not feel pain, but they do react to pruning because you are creating a wound on the tree. As I said earlier, 2,000 plant processes are involved. Your main goals are to open it up for better air circulation and sunlight. Branches that cross and conflict with each other, you want to remove those. Height, very important, especially with fruit. If you can't harvest the ones that are highest, you may want to keep it lower. If you keep it lower, it'll become bushier and more fruit will be located lower also. All these objectives promote improved bearing, which is your overall aim. The tree doesn't care that much about that. It just wants to make sure that its seeds are dispersed so that future generation of the trees will be preserved. That's all a tree cares about. It's also possible to allow your tree to express its own individuality, which is part of the why I say it's therapeutic. When we were working with the interns last week, they were very nervous at first. Before long, they got very into it and started to shape it. I reminded them of the Karate Kid with bonsai trees. Angles, very, very important. This is a very important slide on how to prune. Trees should be roughly, the branches should be roughly, I say a 45-degree angle. Try to get it pruned close to the tree trunk, but not the knurled part, just beyond the knurled part. If you leave it too long, it'll grow, it'll send out new sprouts. Peach trees, plum trees, etc. Prefer a vase shape, so you want to open up the center. Apple trees, pear trees need a central leader. Here, second season, third or fourth season, these are your pruning goals. Like I say, keep it open. You want to open it up in a vase-like shape for peach trees, apricots, nectarines, plums.
What was the summer pinching mentioned there on that previous slide?
I'm sorry, what was it? What did you ask?
Is that just for water sprouts or is that for something else?
Yes, water sprouts, yeah. And this is pruning central leader. The one goal that's similar to the open vase is you don't want a lot of crowding in the center of the tree. You don't want branches that are growing towards the center. You want to improve your air circulation and sunlight penetration. Those are the two main goals. And the tree will produce more fruit if it's pruned properly. I use a lot of neem oil. It's a good insecticide and a fungicide. Here are some other foliar sprays that I have used in the past. At home, I use beneficial nematodes in the ground because they're great for getting rid of Japanese beetles and some other pests. We're experimenting with praying mantis eggs, which you can get, actually Amazon sells them. And also, I can't think of the name of the company, but they are available. And they're great for removing insects, and they won't venture too far from your orchard. Here's some of the other things that I use. Garlic berry is really, really good, especially for vegetables, but also for fruit. Try to avoid the copper fungicide, especially if you have children, because the copper does hide in the soil. Sulfur's pretty good. Unfortunately, these also infect the insects and the beneficial insects. So if you need it because you have a terrible infestation of some malady, try to avoid these because they will affect the beneficial insects and microbes. Neem oil, which as I said, it's my go-to. I don't want to read this whole slide because it's rather dense. As I said, some of these slides are pretty dense. And the whole presentation is available from Catherine if you're interested. And I'm just running through a few of the different substances that I use. Bacillus subtilis is basically, it's a bacteria that will, and it's not harmful to honeybees, but it's a very effective treatment also. Not to be confused, BT is also used in GMO crops. It's entirely different from what I'm talking about. Spinosad is highly toxic to foraging bees. Avoid it if you can. Here's the garlic barrier that I mentioned earlier. It masks the ripening odor of the fruit, so birds can't detect that the fruit is ripening. Kind of clever. Here, I already ran through a lot of these. Sulfur, copper, organocide, plant doctor. This is kind of an interesting chemical because it is broad spectrum, and it is systemic, so it's not really considered organic because it gets into the tree and resides there. However, its ingredients are primarily potassium, so it's not harmful. It's actually a beneficial nutrient. I avoid spraying anything from bud break to petal drop. That's when the bees are foraging. You certainly don't want to interfere with them. Then, as I mentioned, beneficial nematodes. You can get these. There's a few different companies that sell them, and it's also available on Amazon. Cultivating food nature's way. What does the trendy buzzword mean? I prefer a different word, nature's way, or clever laziness. There's one indisputable rule: everyone plants something for food or enjoyment must recognize nature always prevails. So don't fight it. Here's healthy squash. Here's a squash beetle. If you've ever dealt with them, they can be a real nuisance. By the way, garlic barrier will help with those. Never wins. Always remember, when we plant a fruit tree, we're planting it where we want it, not necessarily in the ideal location the tree might need in order to survive and thrive. So we're already starting with one strike against us. And here's the big one of the big nuisances with peaches, brown rot fungus, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. What is nature's way or permaculture? It's growing things without pesticides, herbicides, or fertilizers, sewer sludge, or genetically modified organisms. So relax, why fight it? Nature's way is a system of agricultural principles that stimulate natural ecosystems. It simulates nature by obeying its rules. Like all living things, plants have basic needs: nutrition, water, sunlight, air circulation, and a means to reproduce. All plants have the will to survive. This was the one on the left is I was making a presentation at this woman's house, and she showed me this tree that has had that huge hole in it for, she said, 20 years, and the tree is still surviving. And on the right, that's a John's Homestead in Tucker. So they excavated a whole hill, but the roots still survived, and those trees are thriving despite the interference. They don't want to be coddled, but most fruit tree orchards are not normal. And you may only have a couple of fruit trees, not truly an orchard, but this will apply regardless of how many fruit trees you have. Predators feast on monocultures, so if you have a number of peach trees, you're making it easier for the harmful insects because they just jump from one to the other, easily reproduce. So you may want to mix them up a little bit because different insects have different needs, so that'll slow out some of the infestation. Nature doesn't plant trees in straight lines or in concentric circles, only we do. Once again, if you line them up in a straight line, you're just making it easier for the harmful insects. So we sometimes allow aesthetics to take over for our common sense. No one sprays or fertilizes the forest. Instead, let's bring lessons of the forest into our yards. Otherwise, you have strike two against you if you don't learn from the forest. The Tucker Orchard Guild, my organization, has planted over 500 fruit trees, bushes, and companion plants in the Tucker area over the last 6 years now, at schools, in our parks, and at businesses. Sometimes we have surprise guests. Walter Reeves he showed up. We were planting 35 fruit trees at a senior center in Tucker, and he knew we were doing it, so he showed up to see what we were doing and how we were doing. And good man. The reason I got involved with this is I always believed in organics and permaculture, and a friend from North Georgia called me about some wild peach trees he found in the wild in, I think it was Beaufort. And I showed up, and that is a peach tree on the left that we found in the wild. There were a number of them in that area. And to the right are the seeds that have ultimately produced over 20 peach trees that have distributed as far away as Alabama, the seedlings from this tree. And no one ever fertilized, pruned, or did anything to that peach tree on the left. But look how beautiful the leaves are. You can see that the insects haven't bothered the leaves and also the seeds. And that's because the tree can defend itself because it hasn't had our interference. A few things you might want to know. There are more living organisms in a teaspoon of soil than all the humans on Earth. Oak tree DNA shares the same building blocks as humans, has similar gene structures, and may encode for some proteins that are similar to humans. We have a 60% genetic similarity with banana plants. Fruit flies simulate a lot of our mechanisms, and that's why they have very short lifespans. That's why they're very, very good for research. This is kind of an interesting book, What a Plant Knows. Remember that unlike animals who can't move around, who can move around in search of food, shelter, or a mate, plants are confined to one spot. In fact, their lack of movement heightens their defense system. Because of this, writes Chamovitz, the author of that book, plants have evolved complex sensory and regulatory systems that allow them to modulate their growth in response to ever-changing conditions. This is another reason that permaculture is important, because you want to build up that defense systems naturally that the plants have. When leaf-eating insects attack a plant, the affected plant emits volatile chemicals into the air through smell. This effectively warns neighboring trees of a possible attack. Elevated CO2 impairs a key component of the plant's defenses against leaf-eating insects. In other words, we're compromising the plant's ability to defend itself. Once again, planting trees eliminates CO2. According to the bestseller, The Hidden Life of Trees, which is a wonderful book, I highly recommend it. The forest actually is a social network underground. Trees share resources. They help the younger trees through networks underground, and hopefully how you think about and treat fruit trees in your yard. The Tucker Orchard Guild's planting beliefs and guidelines. There are three parts of this: building the best soil money can't buy, companion planting, which is part of the permaculture solutions, and putting insects to work. For soil building, there are two major thrusts: the wood wide web and the soil food web. The wood wide web is the underground network of microbes that connect trees, species of fungi, and bacteria. One of the things that we do wrong is we till the soil, and we wipe out this network of communications between plants. Of course, you have to dig a hole to plant a tree. Dig the proper hole, but don't till the whole area. Vegetable gardeners are notorious for doing this. There's two books that focus this. One is called Teaming with Microbes, and one is Teaming with Fungi. Two books I highly recommend, and I can give you more information about those later. The soil food web is the community of organisms living all or part of their lives in the soil. We want to encourage this system. The soil food web by Dr. Elaine Ingram. I love this quote: "Our soil teems with a multitude of organisms which provide the necessary work for healthy plants to grow free from disease, pests, and infertility. Good nutrition for us and our trees begins in healthy, chemical-free soils." The issue of endocrine disruption, pesticides, and others should be of great concern to our health. As author Michael Pollan says, we are what we eat eats. We want living soil, not dead dirt. Three main problems with synthetic fertilizers is pollution and leaching. The salts they contain leach from the soil into groundwater and end up in rivers and lakes. The extra nitrogen washing out of urban soils into the water cause algae blooms, which suffocate fish and other aquatic animals. Synthetics do not the soil, and actually they drive off beneficial insects because there's nothing for them to eat, so they're not helping us. Do not confuse weeds with ground covers and other nitrogen fixers, including clover. Clover was not considered a weed until a major chemical company realized it could kill it along with other weeds. So clover got a bad rap. Clover is an excellent, excellent cover crop. It fixes nitrogen in the soil, meaning it takes nitrogen out of the air and deposits it in the soil. And if you remember the three main ingredients for fertilizer, nitrogen is the first one. And then your plants will form a chemical dependency. Just as we, if you like salty chips, you're going to eat more and more of them. Well, your plants have the same a weakness. They'll develop a chemical dependency if that's what you're feeding it. What are fruit tree guilds? Fruit tree guilds are complementary plants with distinct roles surrounding a single or cluster of fruit trees, emulating the symbiotic relationship that exists between plants and nature. We plant a lot of garlic and other allium vegetables and daffodils around our plants. They deter deer and rabbits. One on the left is called a Egyptian walking garlic / onions. It is perennial, so it's actually a garlic. And what happens is bulbs form in the underground and also at the top of the plant. The plant becomes so top heavy, it falls over and buries plants, the actual new bulbs. And before long, you can have them encircle an entire tree. And that's what we've done in Dunwoody, where I used to manage the orchard up there. And all the trees are circled by garlic, and it's really, really helped a great deal. Attractors. These attract a variety of beneficial insects, dill, fennel, coriander. Repellers. These also repel potentially damaging insects. Nasturtiums are one of the best for that. And then mulch, of course, is self-explanatory. And one of the things we do at the peach pit, which I haven't talked much about, or I may not have mentioned at all now that I think of it, we do what we call a whack and drop, where I use a battery-powered weed whacker, and I mulch around the trees and leave everything that I mow down right at the plant's drip line, so that the weeds, what we consider weeds, is now nutrition for the soil, and we top it off with the mulch. And here's also adding nutrients to the soil: yarrow, chicory, dandelions, all good choices. Dandelions, one thing nice about dandelions is they have these long taproots if you've ever tried to remove one, and they will mine things even out of clay. Clay is not a terrible soil. It's high in nutrients. It's just so dense that it's hard to plant up in it. But if you can mine minerals out of it, it's highly beneficial to your plants. And that's one thing that dandelions will do. And the best form of nitrogen, clover again, hairy vetch, peas, beans, and alfalfa. Up in Dunwoody, we experimented by planting beans at the tree, thinking that this would be helpful, and we both have beans and the fruit, and the beans actually drew some insects that we didn't want. So that experiment flopped. And there's an eighth element, which is, once again, it's the mycorrhizal fungi, also known as mycelium. They're not interchangeable, although I interchange the words mycorrhizal and mycelium. But they're an amazing network. It's more efficient at gathering water and nutrients, and it will share it. It will, all it wants from the plants is carbon, which they're removing from the air. And in exchange, they will feed the trees nutrients and water. Pretty good relationship. This is something that I'm really experimenting with, which is called the fungal curve. Since the bad fungi, such as brown rot, rises in the spring and infects our plants, what Michael Phillips, who's a great author, suggests is that if we really build the beneficials, they will rise at the same time and protect the tree versus the bad. I can't confirm this at this time, but I am experimenting with it. And this is just a little bit more about the fungal curve. Fungi and bacteria, which are ever present, are both decomposers in the soil. The most important one for trees is the fungi. One thing that we do, this is the peach pit. This was 4 years ago. Now we have over 30 peach trees there. These are youngsters from the STEM class at Tucker High School. We're laying cardboard when we were just starting out, and the cardboard attracts worms and other beneficial insects, and of course it biodegrades, and it holds down weeds when you're planting the trees also. Do not put it around established trees because you don't want to choke off the nutrients and the water from the plant roots. But when you're starting out, cardboard or newspaper is great mulch. And just got a little bit ahead of myself there. And we want a fungal dominant soil. There's beneficial fungi, as I said, and also pathological fungi. We want one but not the other, and that's what we were talking about earlier with the fungal curve. Once again, sunlight, air circulation, and an active mycelium network to overpower root entry. This is what we want. This is something that you can buy. It's very controversial. I use it all the time, and I find that it works. When you're planting a tree or even vegetables, if you sprinkle a powder like this around the roots of the plant, it'll help establish a mycorrhizal network. For me, it works. They say the average, when you do a number of fruit trees, they say the average success rate is about 70%. My rate's about 95%, and a lot of it I attribute to this. Plus, we know what we're doing, so it helps too. This is something interesting. If you're familiar with the immune system, and everybody should be at this point, with where we are with the pandemic, building your immune system is critical, and plants have the same thing. They have, you can't call it an immune system because there's no proof that it actually learns, but it does. Every plant has its own natural defense system. Basically, they don't have white blood cells and other immune systems like animals, but they do respond via systemic acquired resistance and induce systemic resistance, similar to our ability, in a sense, to learn and adapt. And this is just about relationship between the trees and all the microbes and insects underground, all helpful and beneficial, just as in the forest, as I said earlier. So let's encourage that type of relationship. Putting insects to work. This is one of the most fascinating things for me is plants, if they're being attacked by an insect, will send out a message to other trees to brace themselves. And some other messages are sending out the beneficial insects saying, here's some good eating for you if you come and visit my tree. Most harmful insects are herbivores. They like to eat plant life. You can call them vegetarians. And the beneficial insects are mostly meat eaters. That's why they want to go after the insects that are harmful to our plants. So let's encourage that relationship. It's estimated there's 1,000 different types of insects in a typical backyard. What percentage do you think cause the most damage to our plants? Only 3%. This means that when we spray to kill insects, we also risk killing the beneficial and harmful ones, leaving more room for infestations of the bad bugs. Here are some of our friends you like to attract: ladybugs. Don't buy ladybugs because they won't stay in the yard. They'll be gone before you know it. Assassin bugs, praying mantis, which I mentioned earlier, which we're using. Big-eyed bugs, as I said earlier, do not till. According to the book Weedless Gardening by Lee Reich, there are 140 weed seeds buried in each pound of soil. So when you're tilling, you're also releasing more weed seeds that you really don't want. Many weeds are not weeds. Clover, as I said, is a great nitrogen fixer, and dandelions mine minerals deep in clay soil and bring them to the surface. To develop girth, trees need to sway. If your tree's young and you're worried about it blowing over, put a stake in the ground, but don't have it real tight. And also the labels that come with the trees, if they're around the tree, remove them or loosen them. Battling biting ants, spreading coffee grounds will drive them away. You won't kill the ants, but it'll drive them away. They just don't like coffee grounds. Squirrels nabbing all your fruit. This works for me to some degree. Squirrels are incredibly innovative, as you all well know. So this experiment's not going as well this past year as it did previous years. But here's something that's really interesting. Clemson, if you have peaches and pawpaws, I actually get the AJC every morning, and I cut the bags in half so that they're open at both ends, and I've tied them around peaches and pawpaws last summer. And it preserved the fruit, did not cause any type of bacteria or mold or anything, kept insects and animals away from it. Turns out, and this is actually, Catherine, you introduced me to a gentleman that was at one of the harvests, and he mentioned to me about these Clemson bags. I can't remember the gentleman's name. And I looked it up, and so I've ordered some. So we're going to try using these at the peach pit. We're going to cover some of the trees, the fruit on some of the trees with these bags, and some with the AJC things, which is a much cheaper solution. And each of the interns are going to manage 1 or 2, maybe 3 trees each, and they're all going to tie these bags onto it and see how it does. If you're interested in this, just Google Clemson fruit trees, and they'll take you right to the site. 100 bags for $10, or do what I do, get a subscription to the AJC. And this is just a quote that I like. While many people think organics, permaculture, sustainability, and other granola ideas are too time-consuming and require backbreaking work, even with the acknowledged benefits, if we let nature do their part by cooperating with her, ultimately it ends up being a lot less work. And that's not a quote from Dr. Ingram, who's the author of the Soil Food Web, but that's one from me. So what organics, permaculture, and sustainability mean? They mean ensuring a bountiful planet for future generations, nature's way. And that's the presentation, folks. Hope I didn't talk too quick. And so we have time for questions.
All righty, awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. So to remind y'all, we're gonna do the stack method. So we're gonna just, if you have a question, put it in the chat, just put stack in the chat. And I'd love for you to actually personally ask the question to Mike so he can see you, see your face, feel like we're having more of a real conversation. So if I think Xander was the first person to stack. So Xander, if you'll turn on your video, if it's not on, and ask your question, and then we'll kind of work our way down.
Can you all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you mind if I ask two? I have like 2 pretty small questions.
Sure.
So one was going back to compost. You were talking about blueberries and that they like acidic soil. And I have tons of like pine straw available. Is that a good mulch to use around blueberries, or is there anything to know about that?
You have a lot of what?
Pine straw.
Pine straw, yes, pine straw is very beneficial, but pine straw doesn't leach as much acid as you might think. You can use pine straw on any plant, frankly. And one thing that it's good, it does keep weeds down, but it won't add a lot of acidity to the soil.
Okay.
You can use pine chips. Pine chips are very, very good. They're a little bit denser, obviously. And if you go to any box store, they'll sell a variety of different ones. Don't get the colored ones, that one that they paint or whatever the heck they do to them. I have no idea what they do to them. Just get the natural ones, but that'll be very, very beneficial.
Okay.
And also, if you can't find the one that I showed, any type of azaleas like acidic soil. So you get azalea food also.
Oh, great. Okay. And then my other question was, I have a persimmon tree and a couple of blueberries, and they're all planted on a pretty steep grade, like maybe like 30 or 40 degrees. So I was just wondering if you had any general tips about like fruit trees on a steep hill and how to water them and all that.
they're on a 30-degree angle, you said?
Yeah.
Is the water running off of them? Is that what's happening?
So when I planted them, I tried to like dig out a little bit of a bowl around each one so they would be able to retain water and it wouldn't just run off the hill. But now hearing some of the things you said, I wonder if that might be like gathering too much water close to the tree also.
What I would do without saying it, it's very important to keep the mulch, wood chips, a few inches away from the trunk of the tree.
Mm-hmm.
I'm building up to the answer actually. And then from there, 3 to 4 inches max of wood chips or mulch will retain the water enough to keep it from running down the hill, I believe.
Okay.
So I think you're on the right track. Unless you see it dripping down the side of the hill, I think that should serve your purpose.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Yep. The other thing, blueberries. How old are your blueberries?
1 year. Planted them about this time last year.
Okay, because blueberries really don't need to be pruned outside of removing dead branches.
Okay.
When they get to be, I have 40 in my yard, and we're planted a couple hundred probably in and around. When they get to be 6 or 8 feet tall, you can start to lower the height. So that's just an added tip.
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks again.
sure, thank you.
I think Leslie had a question about neem oil. Leslie, if you can unmute yourself and ask, that'd be great.
Okay, hi, thanks, Mike.
Hi.
The question was about neem oil or actually any fungicide application. Are you spraying the whole tree? Or are you just spraying, how do you apply the fungicide?
You
Or
spray
neem
the
oil?
whole tray. You
Okay.
spray the whole tray. The best time to do it if you have stone fruit is at bud break, and
At
that's
what?
just as the buds are just as the
Okay,
petal drop. At petal drop, just as the petals are starting to drop, that's when it's very vulnerable for fungus to get inside the tree. So you can spray the neem oil, and it's already been pollinated, so you don't have to worry about harming anything. Although neem oil supposedly won't hurt bees, so.
okay.
And be a little bit careful about that because neem oil is very thick.
Mhm.
The stuff they sell as a fungicide that they sell in the spray bottle is not completely neem oil. It still works, but the best neem oil is kind of thick. As the temperature rises, it thins a little bit. Mix it with dish detergent, a good quality dish detergent, and that'll help it thin it a little bit. So
Okay, great,
use it then.
thank you.
More than you asked for.
No, it's perfect.
Okay, great.
Okay, that seems like, is Sam the next question? Sorry, I'm trying to, yes, Sam wants to talk about tree planting, yeah.
So our names are Sam and Tom, and we just each bought houses and each bought like 6 trees. So we are about to go on a rampage the next couple weekends of planting trees. We were wondering any advice for everything to do with first placement, spacing, the first year. Any advice for that? We have figs and Asian pears and persimmons and.
Okay, you picked 3 really good varieties that don't require a lot of work. Persimmons, you have Asian persimmon, you said?
I got American persimmons, but I also
American?
bought Asian persimmon to try to do grafting later, but that's different.
Okay. There's an expression that the initial hole is the most important thing, so that's a good consideration. Do not fertilize at all. There's no need to fertilize. As I mentioned earlier, I recommend get some of that mycorrhizal material. There's a number of different brands. Look at them on Amazon for one that you feel comfortable with. Like I said, I'm convinced it really works. Once you get your trees in the ground, well, let's back up a little bit. Make sure you have adequate sunlight, 6 to 8 hours. I know in Atlanta it's very tough sometimes to get adequate sunlight. Try to find a location that has adequate sunlight. Okay, so now it's in the ground. You're happy with it. You've mulched it. You can prune up to a third of it immediately, and you should prune it. You should prune it. You may be unhappy that you're leaving a stick in the ground, but it's beneficial to the plant. If you have a couple of side branches, you can prune those. You want to keep some of it, but don't be afraid to take up to a third of the tree off, and it'll be fine. Figs, persimmon, and what was the third one?
Asian pears.
Asian pear. Yeah, you picked 3 good ones, and they don't have a lot of enemies. Persimmons are really, really fine. I have run across a fig tree. A friend of mine had a fig tree. She was giving away more figs than she knew what to do with, and it developed that needle disease. I can't think of the name of it, and which is deadly to the tree. But I had taken a couple of cuttings off of the tree from her the year before, and I ended up giving her seedling from her original tree. Normally, they're very hardy, have very few insects. Ambrosia beetle is the name of the disease. Ambrosia beetles. They burrow into the tree and send out these thin columns of sawdust that almost look like needles, and it is deadly. And you have to remove it from the premise. It has nothing to do with your tree. Figs are very easy to grow. A lot of people in the north cover them during the winter because they technically are tropical, but I wouldn't worry about that down here. They do very, very well. Down the road to year 2, 3, 4, make sure you prune it to the shape that you want, because figs have a mind of their own more than any other tree I know, and they'll get big and unwieldy. So be careful of that. Pears, very easy, very, very easy. They'll go all of a sudden, year 3 or 4, all of a sudden they want to shoot up real, real high. So I would keep it lower. It makes it easier to harvest. That's about it. Any other questions on that?
And obviously, we're planting them on a residential piece of property. Any advice about spacing? How much space should we give them?
This is interesting. I was really interested in planting things closer and closer together a few years ago as space limitation. And the only problem with that is when the branches start interfering with each other, it makes it a little bit unwieldy. I would say if you have enough space, 6 to 8 feet is probably the minimal amount of space between them.
Great.
Yeah, I would say 6 to 8. Do you have enough room to do that?
Yeah, we have that. Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Okay. And most important thing is make sure you have adequate sunlight. That's really, really important.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, Sarah has a question about blueberries.
I always laugh
Sarah?
when people say,
Sorry, actually, if it's Sarah Kelty, me, it was
Yes.
answered earlier. I was just saying thanks for answering that question. I had the same one.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
got it. And Nura and Sina have a question about pomegranates.
pomegranates?
Those are our kids. We have about a 9.5-year-old pomegranate tree that's not in a good spot. We want to move it so it gets more sunlight in the round. It's too close to our neighbor's fence, and just want to know like how much space we should like dig around it to move it.
It's 9 years old?
Yes, it's about 9.5 young.
Oh my goodness.
But it's still small just because it's not in a good spot.
Okay. Have you tried to wiggle it a little bit?
Like from the trunk just to see its rooting?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, near the top at the trunk, and just slowly move it and see how much wiggle you have in it. Okay.
Okay.
Sometimes that'll reveal where the root ball is.
Okay.
If not, what I would do is I would go out, and with that age tree, without actually seeing it, can you go out 4 feet from the trunk?
Yep.
Yeah. On the front and sides, but not on the side closest to our neighbor's fence.
Okay.
That might be about 2-3 feet. No, that's pretty well. Maybe it's about that, I guess.
Okay. With a narrow shovel, at about 4 feet out, dig down and see if you uncover any of the roots. Okay. If you don't, then you can go even a little closer. okay? But 4
Okay.
feet should be safe. And then it's basically, it's not an easy job. I'm telling you, it's not an easy job. And I'm trying to think if pomegranates have big tap roots or not. I don't think they do.
Okay.
Pawpaws are like impossible to remove from the ground with the tap roots they have, even when they're 1 year old. So dig around around 4 feet out and see if you're touching any roots. If not, you can go a little bit closer. And then it's a question of just working the soil below it until you start to be able to wiggle it a little bit, and then basically just pluck it out of the ground.
Okay.
That's all you can do.
Okay.
At that age, I'm really worried you're not going to have much success, but try it,
Okay.
Try it.
Or just try and clear more around it, but their fence is the biggest thing.
Yeah. Pomegranates are great. And I always would encourage you to try to save it, but you may have a job ahead of you.
Yeah.
What time of year should be done?
Say again.
I'm sorry?
What time of year should that be done? Like that shouldn't be done in the middle of the summer, presumably. Like
No. It needs to be. The best time to do it is while the tree's dormant.
Is when?
Best time to do it, which is now.
Oh, okay.
This is a real good time to do it.
Okay.
And how deep?
It'd be a little tough. Okay.
And how deep do we need to go, digging wise?
You have to go down around a foot.
Oh, okay.
And then you want to work go down about a foot and then start working your shovel towards the tree. And if you run into more roots as you're digging down, then you want to accommodate for those too. You're going to lose some roots. There's no question about it. But you want to keep as much root as possible because the tree depends on the roots, obviously. So you're going to lose some roots, but try to get as many as possible and get underneath them if possible. It's a feeling game. That's all I can say is it's a feeling game. You have to feel for the roots and honor them as much as possible. So good luck. I'd love to hear how you make out.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay, we have a question about pawpaws from Stephen.
Okay.
Stephen, can you ask your question? Okay, we'll come back to Stephen if he comes around.
Okay.
Nate's got something to say.
Yeah, so I know a lot of people have, you were saying that sunlight is really important, obviously, but a lot of people it can be hard to find sunlight. Something that I found extremely helpful is augmented reality apps for tracking the sun. You can get them for just a couple bucks on an app store, and then you can kind of use your phone and look at the sky and figure out, count up the number of hours that the sun will be out, especially if you have lots of trees and you can look and say, oh, that part's really sunny, but then maybe it's only sunny for 2 hours a day and it looks like it's really sunny. So that's something that I've found very helpful. How much sunlight a tree wants to get.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. And the other thing to consider is if you're planting it when they're dormant, the trees above it, the tree canopy may not be full of leaves. So you have to make sure that you're not planting it under a tree that's gonna leaf out and block your tree. So that's another consideration. However, something else to consider is modeled sunlight works also. It doesn't have to be 6 to 8 hours continuously. It may all of a sudden be clear sky and then it goes across a few tree branches and then it's clear sky again. That helps. So I know Atlanta can be tough with planting fruit trees underneath tree canopy. Can be challenging, especially with the older homes we have here. Good. Thank you for that tip.
Okay, so apparently Stephen's microphone can't work, but he was curious about anything particular pawpaws. I have 3 pretty healthy 4-year-old trees, low fruit production. So I guess anything about encouraging fruit production in pawpaws.
Okay, you need more than one. They should be close together because bees do not like pawpaws. Bees will not pollinate pawpaws because they don't like the smell of the flowers. So the best pollinator is wind and flies. Some people suggest planting like dead meat onto the plant, which I will not do. Instead, I plant them close together. I have 4 in my backyard, 2 in my front yard, and another 100 in pots. And we had great harvest last year. The other thing is you can hand pollinate it. I do a little bit research before you do that. You need to move the wet part of the flower between two trees, not 2 flowers on the same tree. And it is possible to do that. It's a lot of work though, because you're only going to get as much fruit as the flowers that you treat. So it is time consuming. I think the wind is a great pollinator, and flies and other insects. So that's about it. If we low fruit production, you may have more next year. If you had some fruit, that's a really good sign. Really, really good sign. So.
So I think that is it, folks. I am going to send out.
Question,
oh, go ahead.
Catherine.
Yeah.
Someone had written before this meeting that they wanted to know if there was a permaculture society in the Atlanta area.
Yeah,
There is something called North Georgia Permaculture Network. They're on Facebook. If anybody's on Facebook that wanted to know, you can just Google North Georgia Permaculture Network and you can plug right in. It's an organization that promotes permaculture. So.
thank you.
Okay.
Awesome. So I'm going to send out the slides. I'm going to share the recording of the class. And thank you guys so much for joining us. We're actually doing another class in 45 minutes. It is a beginner tree care class with Nehemiah Ray, and he's actually going to be out at our farm doing it in person, talking about trees and planting. And so it'll be more surface level, more kind of back to the basics of just what do you do once you've just gotten your fruit tree and you're starting to plant and that first year of care. And I'll also be teaching that same class again tomorrow at 10. You can find all the links for all the classes on the Alfie Fruit Tree Sale website. And then if you want to get more involved with Mike's organization, it's Tucker Orchard Guild. And if you want to volunteer with Concrete Jungle, just go to our website and sign up for our newsletter there. We are out on our farm every other weekend, and starting in May, we'll be picking fruit every Thursday evening. And in the meantime, we're delivering groceries 3 days a week to families all over the city. And Nate, I'm going to promote this even though we're not exactly sure of the details. Nate is going to lead a really exciting guerrilla grafting project all over the city where we turn stupid ornamental fruit trees like Bradford pears into edible pear trees.
Funny, that's great.
So we're working with Jerry Larson, who's an amazing UGA extension agent, retired, who's done a lot of apple and pear breeding. And he's bred varieties that are really good for growing in Southern climate, but also have incredible flavor. So yeah, we're gonna make this city fruitier than it already is. So again, another reason to sign up for our newsletter so you can stay posted about that stuff. But thanks so much, guys. I'm going to go ahead and shut down this class and maybe see y'all in the next one if you want.
Thank you. Thanks, Catherine.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Sure. See ya.
Bye.